We count down the top 10 most important players heading into the summer. We're at number 7. We will announce that, but give us the countdown to build up the suspense, Caleb Calhoun.
All right, so we have discussed Javonte Spraggins, John Campbell Jr., and Amari Thomas. Who I probably should have put higher, but I love him because I'm a huge Amari Thomas fan. But
it's true. All right, well, we did this together. I'm a big McCoy guy, and we've got him at number 7. So somehow I probably would have had him a little bit higher. There's a group effort there. Why is he the 7th most important player and one of the most important players on Tennessee's football team? Because I think you saw last season without Bru McCoy, and we want to throw this all on the quarterback, but I'm not going to do that. I think we saw last season that they didn't have a guy that dictated coverage, and Tennessee was suddenly defendable. I think a big part of that was because of Bru McCoy, and I'm curious if you think it was more Bru, more quarterback, what percentage? Brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off, HOOKED for 10% off. And I remind you that our poll question is up and running right now. Which Vol benefits the most from Nico? Now, Bru, 32%. Dante Thornton, 32%. Slot receiver, 11%. Tight ends get 26%. So Tennessee's offense last year and their struggles, what percentage was quarterback play? What percentage was Bru McCoy being injured and not having a true number 1 wide receiver?
Let the record show that Dave is out here right now providing a very legitimate excuse for Joe Milton's struggles last year. He's not putting it all on Joe Milton. Look at Dave. Everybody stand up and applaud for Dave.
It's a real one. Yeah, I mean, it's a real one because other guys aren't as open because you don't have to shift coverage over to him. And I thought Tillman was that kind of guy and McCoy was that kind of guy. So, yeah, I'll defend quarterback play last year. Got no problem doing that.
Yeah, I think that was a huge issue, largely because Dante Thornton was out of position and he was never fully healthy. So with that, they didn't have, you're right, they didn't have any receiver that could actually change coverage or dictate coverage. Now, Ramel Keaton was a reliable hands guy, but you're right, he wasn't going to dictate coverage. And also Ramel Keaton was playing hurt last year too. I forgot about him.
And about 3 people pointed out drop balls, which was a bit of a factor.
Yes, but okay, guys, part of the drop balls is it's hard to get in rhythm with quarterbacks if they're not hitting you accurately a lot. And then when they
leading you, throwing you open. I agree with that, but goodness gracious, we've gone back and forth with current players who some of which believe that, yeah, if it hits you in the hand, you got to catch it. Some think that, no, you need to throw a better ball. So, but you're right. Some of those probably should have been caught.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that. And Bru McCoy's injury definitely didn't help. I do think it was part of it. Look, but then I go back and look, Dave. I mean, Tennessee's last 2 losses, they're not beating Missouri or Georgia, no matter who's healthy or when they're healthy. Those were 2 blowout losses because the defenses were just horrendous, and then the offense couldn't close the deal when they moved the ball. Do they beat Alabama? I still don't think they do. I think Alabama turned it on when they needed to. I think the only injury that really made an impact on any game was Florida last year, and Bru McCoy was in that game. But in terms of how Joe Milton looked in games, yeah, I'd be willing to say that if Bru McCoy is out there, he probably gets a couple more touchdowns where they blow out Kentucky. He makes Missouri more respectable. I think a lot of that happens. So Bru getting back this year is a big deal. Also, look, they've gone from 1 to 4 receivers that can dictate coverage because Mike Matthews can dictate coverage.
Well, we think.
Yes. Everything I've heard is that Chris Brazzell can. He apparently was a standout in the spring. And now Chris Brazzell is just a hands guy. That doesn't necessarily mean dictate coverage. So I could be overreacting there. But Dante Thornton's athleticism should make him good enough to dictate coverage. So I think because of that, I think if it were this year, Tennessee would be much better no matter what, because if there was an injury, they'd be able to offset it. You're right. It was an issue last year, and Bru McCoy was missed down the stretch of the season. I'm just not sure they win any of those games if Bru McCoy is healthy, because I don't think Tennessee, again, Alabama, I think was just better. Missouri threw a totally different game plan, and Georgia was just significantly better.
The only one that I could probably, well, I could pick two of those games. Missouri with a Bru McCoy, they're a much, much better offense. And I could say that with Alabama, you and I differ on Alabama. I think that Nick Saban just kind of discovered what they needed to do. I don't think that Tennessee was being played with at all. I think they were would have won had there been a quarterback change. Again, I don't want to get into that, but Bru McCoy, what happens if he is not your guy for whatever reason? If the injury continues to hurt him, or if he gets re-injured, God forbid, that's something you certainly don't want. But let me ask you, in terms of what if he's not your major contributor this upcoming year, who is? And it's brought to you by Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. All work is covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online at qualitytirepros.com. qualitytirepros.com. Stop in and say, hey, Bo, Off the Hook Sports sent me. Hey, Bo, Off the Hook Sports sent me. So if it's not Bru, who is it?
To dictate coverage this year?
Yes. I mean, 'cause I think it takes one guy who can move defensive backs around. I disagree with you on Thornton. I don't think he's that good. But I think if they have to turn to another receiver, I don't think he's on the team right now. I think they would.
I disagree.
Okay, well, that's fine. I think they would have to do somewhat of the group effort like they did when Bru went down last year, and we saw how that went.
I think you may be right about Thornton, and I said Chris Brazo with hands. Those aren't hills I would die on, so I'll just be fair on that.
Love that.
But what I will say, I think Mike Matthews could do it. I think Mike Matthews is a generational talent at wide receiver. You may be looking, if everything the coaches have hinted about him is true, dare we say the Randy Moss profile?
Okay, you did that last year, and look what you did to him.
I didn't do that to Dante Thornton last year. I said he's a rare fit. I'm doing this with Mike Matthews. I've heard nothing but good things about Mike Matthews. If he doesn't show up this year, I'm going to start calling the Hypo coaching staff as much liars as Butch Jones's coaching staff was.
Okay, but listen, you're talking about Randy. You've compared two Tennessee wide receivers to Randy Moss.
I never compared Thornton to Moss. No, what I said was Thornton going to Tennessee's offense was like Kevin Durant joining the Warriors, because the offense was already elite, and then you add this receiver who's just a perfect fit for it. Okay, Mike Matthews, I'm not saying, like, Mike Matthews is a guy, it's not a fit thing. Mike Matthews would be elite anywhere. But everything I've heard is that did you see that catch he made in the spring game? It actually wasn't an accurate throw by Nico. So I'm just saying, guys, watch out for Mike Matthews. I think that Mike Matthews is going to be a superstar. And just to address a question that was just mentioned on the message board, I think Caleb Webb and Chaz Nimrod are going to not play much this year. I think they have pretty much been relegated to.
I think they've been surpassed by more talented players.
Yes, all due respect to them, but yeah. I think
they've been surpassed. Only love here. Caleb, the show represented.
Yes, I never hate anybody here.
The show represented by Banks and Jones, and who will be Tennessee's most productive receiver out of the guys we've mentioned in 60 seconds. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Rank it in terms of catches and yardage. Tennessee's top 3 receivers other than Bru are who, Caleb? Do we want to say, as off the hook sports, our take is Razzle, Matthews, and Thornton? They may not be the next best 3, but we can do that for the sake of argument. I would take out of the 3 of those, most catches, Razzle, second, Thornton, and third, Matthews. I'm going to go third, Matthews, in yards as well, but I'll flip-flop those guys and go Thornton because I think he's a bigger deep threat and will gain more yardage. Fair? Does that make sense?
Fair enough. I'm going to go Bru McCoy, leads and catches and yards, obviously. Second is going to be Squirrel White. Squirrel White in the slot, because the slot guy is always the second. The slot guy and the whiteout are the top 2 guys in the system. After Squirrel White, I will go. I'm gonna go Mike Matthews. I'm gonna go Mike Matthews, and then I'll go Dante Thornton. Now, I could be swayed on that. I think Mike Matthews is a more generational overall receiver. But from what you're telling me, it sounds like Dante Thornton could be the Alvin Harper of this offense. Yes. Where just straight line, run down the sideline, and then clear things up for Bru McCoy on the other side.
Right. I think the defense rotates over to cover Bru, give a little help on him. I mean, UTC may not do it. They may not do it early in September. They'll make sure that he's 100% healthy, but it's going to happen eventually. Boy, Dylan made up a great point. Castles could have had a great season with Nico. That just does seem like a great match if they could have had 1 year together.
Mahomes and Kelsey style?
Yeah, I can only imagine. All right, so there we go. So you like Brazel. We both like Matthews. Matthews, by the way, it's worth noting, on a billboard in Knoxville. And listen, they don't think for a second that the Spire Group doesn't have some insight from the University of Tennessee and their football staff as to who goes on billboards. And Mike Matthews is on a car dealership billboard.